whether it's in the courtroom, fighting in the boardroom, trying to feed your family, or kicked out underneath you.
God's able.
God is more than able. He can turn the table.
So turn and tell.
Turn and tell your neighbor now it's time.
Because just like Joseph, I was arrested, charged, and thrown in jail for a crime I did not commit. I was charged with 9 Class X felonies, each carrying up to 30 years apiece if I was convicted. If I took my case to trial and I lost, I faced a maximum of 270 years in prison. I was taken to a maximum security division within the Cook County Jail, where I was locked up and locked down for the past 3 years. It's safe to say I was under the jail. My bond was $500,000, and I didn't have it. My family, they do okay, but they didn't have it like that either. My family did everything that they can possibly do to help me and support me while I was in that place, but I was out of their reach. Sometimes we'll find ourselves in situations where our safety nets are snatched from beneath us. I was desperate, y'all. Just like this woman in the scripture. My backup plan was no longer existent. My lawyer told me I was done. She told me there was no way around it. There was nothing that she could do for me. My public defender went to the state's attorneys and the prosecutors, and she told me that the state's attorneys and the prosecutors were looking to cut me a deal. And they were willing to offer me 30 years if I accept a plea deal and plead guilty to the charges against me. My lawyer insisted that I take this 30 years. I told him, no, I ain't taking no 30 years. I can't just take no 30 years. That's so old. I told my lawyer, I said, look, we're going to have to take this case to trial. My lawyer stopped and looked at me. She smacked her lips. She rolled her eyes. She told me I was crazy. She just walked off. I remember standing there, just trying to process the information that was given to me. Couldn't believe what she was telling me. This is supposed to be my lawyer? This is supposed to be the person that has been appointed to defend me and fight for me? It seems to me as if she's fighting against me. I was so desperate. I was fighting for my life. Then on top of that, my own lawyer was fighting against me. All of the stuff that was going on in my life at the time definitely had me feeling some type of way. I was desperate sitting off in that cell. I felt like I didn't have anything else to lose. I had given myself 2 options. I was either going to kill myself or I was going to give God one last try. I chose the latter. And at that point, the Lord had invited me into a level of intimacy with Him that would change my life forever. 1 month ago, I woke up in my cell when the police officers were at my door. They shackled me up and they take me over to the courthouse and they place me in a bullpen cell, a holding cell. And I'm sitting in this holding cell I'm expecting to get another continuance and then just go back to my life of solitude. But my public defender came back to the holding cell to speak to me. And she said, Mr. Smith, I don't know who you've been praying to, but whoever it is, you need to keep doing it because it's working. She said, Mr. Smith, I looked into your case, and I'm seeing some stuff now that I didn't see before. I've given your case careful consideration, Mr. Smith. And I didn't like your case before. But I think you have a chance to win. And because of that, we're going to go to trial today. And I said, today? No, we can't go to trial today. I wasn't prepared to go to trial today. I wasn't notified. And besides, my family is not even here. They weren't notified. We couldn't possibly go to trial today. She said, Mr. Smith, we going to trial today. The prosecutors are ready. We're ready. It's been 3 years. I'm going to go over this paperwork in this courtroom. I'm going to look over my notes, and I'll see you out in that courtroom. And she just walked off. And I remember just standing there, and this paralyzing fear had totally overtaken my entire body. Words cannot accurately describe the way that it feels to find out you're about to go to trial and your life is on the line.
My Lord, that's right, that's right.
And if that wasn't enough, my family wasn't even there. I was all alone. So I thought. So I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I know you're not about to let me go out like this. I said, Lord, you're not about to let me go out in that courtroom and let them people just do me no any old kind of way. So I decided to do the only thing that I knew how to do. I decided to do the only thing that I had been doing for the past 3 years off in that cell. And that's run to the secret place. There was this metal bench in the back of the holding cell. And I went back there and I got down on my knees. And when I got down on my knees, it seemed like almost immediately the Lord had revealed to me that the entire time I had spent locked off in that cell, the Lord had been utilizing that time to cultivate me and prepare me for that exact moment. It was in that moment that the Lord had started to bring the scriptures to my remembrance. It was in that moment that the Lord had reminded me that every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that it shall be given unto you. It was in that moment that the Lord had reminded me that if you shall decree a thing, that it shall be given unto you.
Come on.
It was in that moment that the Lord had reminded me that no weapon that is formed against you is going to prosper. So be still and see the salvation of the Lord. For the enemies that you see today, you will see them again no more forever. Because the Lord is going to fight for you. And you're going to be able to hold your peace. And it was in that moment that the Lord had reminded me that He didn't give us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. And it was just in that moment that that paralyzing fear that I once felt had began to subside. And that paralyzing fear was then replaced by a stronger, more confident faith. And I'm not just talking about no idiot kind of faith. I'm talking about the type of faith that will allow you to see the things that you cannot see with the natural eye. So as soon as I finished my prayer, I stood to my feet. And no sooner as I stood to my feet, the bailiff was calling me out to the courtroom to start trial. And as soon as my foot crossed the threshold into that courtroom, I could see the chariots of God all over that courtroom. I saw God's warring angels and God's ministering angels. I saw God's angelic host strategically positioned all around that courtroom. And the Lord told me, He encouraged me, that even though your family is not here, my son, you are not alone. And it was in that moment that the Lord had encouraged me. When Elijah's servant had finished his prayer, he opened his eyes. Elijah reassuring me that there are more of us than there are of them. For the chariots of God are tens of thousands and thousands of thousands. And if that's not enough, God is among them. God is going to show up personally in order to intervene and show himself mighty on your behalf. So I walked over to the defense table where my lawyer was sitting. And I sat down next to my lawyer so we could start trial. And as I looked down at the paperwork that covered the defense desk, I looked a little closer at the paperwork. And I noticed that the paperwork was covered in the blood of Jesus. I looked over at my lawyer, and the pen that she was writing with was covered in the blood of Jesus. I looked over at the state's attorneys and the prosecutors, and the pens that they were writing with, and the paperwork that they were writing on was covered in the blood. From the beginning of the opening arguments to the end of the closing arguments, the light of God's countenance was all over that trial that day. And God had given me the ability by faith to be able to see and experience it with my own spiritual eyes. So as soon as the closing arguments were over, my judge called for a brief recess so that he can go and decide the verdict. So while I waited for my judge to bring back the verdict, I looked over at my lawyer. And the same person who told me I was done, the same person who for the past 3 years had been trying to get me to take 30 years for a crime I didn't commit, this same person was now looking to befriend me. This same person was now looking to fight beside me as my ally. Then I looked over at the state's attorneys and the prosecutors. And those same people who sought to take my life from me. These same people who told me that I would spend the rest of my life in prison. I could see them turning their swords on themselves. Those same people who sought to attack me in one direction, I could see them turn and flee in 7 different directions. And as soon as the recess was over, my judge returned to the bench with his verdict. Now keep in mind, my judge has a reputation of being one of the strictest, toughest, meanest judges in the Cook County Criminal Courts building. My judge is the same judge that has a reputation of handing out life sentences just as easy as a person hands out a resume at a job fair. My judge has a reputation of always siding with the prosecution. So my judge returns to the bench with his verdict. He looks me in my eye and he said, "Mr. Smith, would you please stand?" And I stood to my feet. And my judge said, "Mr. Smith, I do not believe that you committed this crime that they're accusing you of. Mr. Smith, I cannot find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So in the case of the state of Illinois versus the defendant, Mr. Smith, I hereby find the defendant not guilty."